Okay, welcome everybody to the 2023 Point in Time Count Refresher webinar. This is for the unsheltered piece of the count. Like I said yesterday was the sheltered piece. If you are not here for the unsheltered piece of the project, you are more than welcome to stay. Just want to let you know that that's what we'll be focusing on today. If, excuse me, if for some reason you mixed your days up and you thought today was sheltered and yesterday was unsheltered and vice versa. Good news, as promised, the Zoom recording from yesterday's presentation is up on our website. I will drop that in the chat fairly soon, and as well as all the desk guides and all that good stuff. So I will be sure to get you that. And with that being said, we can go ahead and get right into it. Okay, just going to go over our meeting agenda loosely. This is the flow of how things will go today. We'll do some introductions for our presenters and for our partners in this project. Talk about program overview, roles and responsibilities. Jim will do a PIT database demo. We'll briefly talk about the methodology, data cleanup, things you need to know prior to the night of the count, the actual night of the count, and after the night on the count. And as always, we'll continue to provide you with those resource links. We have created a web page in addition to our Advancing Connecticut Together website that is all PIT, and that's what I will be specifically dropping in the chat, so you don't have to do any hide and seek once we do that. And again, our contact information, references, so on and so forth. A couple housekeeping things. I invite you to mute yourself if you're not presenting. Use the chat to ask any questions that you may have. Myself and the team and our intern Patricia will be monitoring the chat and answering any questions that we can. And if for some reason you ask a question that's going to be answered very shortly, we'll just let you know. But by all means, ask the question. Okay, so we'll do some introductions. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. My name's Brendan Colbert, and probably see a lot of my name on your email addresses and that whole shebang. I work for Advancing Connecticut Together. I'm a project manager for the Connecticut Point in Time Count. She's not on here, but I'll let our intern Patricia introduce herself next.
Hi everyone, my name is Patricia. I'm the HICSA intern. I work with Brendan and the whole team in order to coordinate this project, and I'll be monitoring the chat. Nice to meet you and see you all.
Okay, Jim, you're up next.
Hi, Jim Bombasi with Nutmeg Consulting, and we manage the PIT database for the project for the sheltered programs and unsheltered programs.
Cool. Shannon, you are up.
Hey everyone, my name is Shannon Quinn Sheeran. I'm an associate with Housing Innovations. And at Housing Innovations, we staff a lot of the balance of state COC activities. And one thing that we do for the HIC and PIT is a lot of the housing inventory chart activities, which already took place and is much more relevant for the sheltered count. We also reach out to providers who haven't confirmed their data. So you may hear from us after the fact, and we also do some data quality checks on the data for the housing inventory and the point in time counts.
Great, thank you. Last but not least, Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. Lindsay Fabrizio. I am with the Housing Collective. I am the manager for our Continuum of Care, which is Opening Doors Fairfield County, or ODFC. We provide backbone support and technical assistance to our stakeholders, and I manage the PIT for our region. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, just to double down, this kind of is a concise way to kind of mention how the team split up, project management, act. Full disclosure, we all do the same thing. People are excel at different things, but we all help each other. Database and technology, Nutmeg, obviously, they're like the Avengers of IT. The bed count change forms, depending on which part of the state you're in, it's either going to be CT Boss that is represented by Housing Innovations or ODFC. Lindsay, just like she mentioned. Okay, so pretty certain that at this point, 18 days out, folks are pretty familiar with what the point in time count is. But just for ha-has, we'll go through it. Um, High level overview, it's a federal program. When does this program take place? It traditionally takes place in the last 10 days of January. This year, it happens to be Tuesday, January 24th. We're counting both sheltered and unsheltered individuals. Today, we're doing the unsheltered count, so we're focused on the folks who are living in a place that's essentially not meant for human habitation. Why we do it and what the ultimate goal is. We do it because it needs to be done. We also do it because we want to make sure that no stone is not unturned and all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So we want to make sure that all the resources and funding can be or will be sent to our state. So that's where we are. Okay, so a couple details to mention. Just like last year, the service-based piece of the point in time count will be removed or has been removed from the methodology. So the street canvassing, all of those other aspects that have been traditionally done in this project are not being explored. However, we are going to focus heavily on data, HMIS data for those programs who use HMIS, programs and agencies who use HMIS, and then the PIT database that Jim's going to do a very detailed demo on for folks who are not HMIS users in addition to what they already do. So everybody will end up using the PIT database, but we just wanted to make that known that is the change. I know last year towards the actual date, we sent out an email say, hey, because of COVID spikes, so on and so forth, we're making this adjustment. But this year, we're going to go ahead and continue that methodology. Okay, so this slide you probably recognize from back in October data cleanup. You always should be cleaning up your data, ensuring that all program enrollments are where they're supposed to be, so on and so forth. So we left that in there, and you'll see this a few times in this presentation, but the Nutmeg Help Desk, the email address is help@nutmegit.com. Early plug, we'll get into this in about an hour from now, but anytime you email Nutmeg, CT Boss, ODFC, please be as detailed as possible. There's a plethora of inquiries that they get, and we want to make sure that you're being represented in the way that you need to be represented in, so they know, hey, this is what I'm working on. It's just help everybody if you go ahead and include as much data as possible. Okay, so as I go get myself some water, I'm gonna transfer the reins to Lindsay so I can drink some more of this Kool-Aid over here. You're up.
Very, very important to hydrate.
Mhm.
Hi, everybody. So you will see a link here. It'll be available on the slides when you receive that. The current living assessment link. That's really important. If you go click on the link and you go to the bottom on the left is where all the different attachments, guides, information, and documents that you would need for this process. So that would be pretty good to familiarize yourself with that link. If you are not yet familiar with the current living assessment, it will give you a quick little guide to show you how to access it and how to turn it in. Looks like Brendan is showing you now, which is great. So this will be the thing that ensures that your clients are properly pulled into the database. If your clients do not have a current living assessment, they will not get pulled into the PIT database, and that will make the data issue annoying. So for the HMIS verification assessment, the same as the current living situation. I don't believe it is. No, I think that is a separate assessment. David. So for HMIS participating agencies prior to the night of the count, it's critical that everyone works on, that's working either on a PATH or a regular outreach team, is following up on their caseloads in HMIS, doing any necessary cleanup on any old outreach enrollments that you might have, especially for any that may not have had any activity in the last 60 days. There is a PIT data quality report that can be accessed on the PIT database. I don't know if everyone has access to that report or not. Jim, you'll have to let me know. But the COC leads for sure have access to it. We can pull those reports. We can send those out to you. I think Shannon is going to touch a little bit more on this at one of the future slides as well. So if you have questions or concerns about your enrollments, whether or not things need to get removed, closed out, et cetera, that will be a fuller discussion, and we are the ones that you would want to connect with. It will make your lives a lot easier if you guys start working on cleaning up this data now instead of doing it on the night of the count when you're going to be doing reporting on your people, as well as trying to clean up any enrollments that should be closed out or should be added in. So make sure that you're doing your data cleanup. On the night of the pit or over the course of the 7 days following the night of the count, as you do your follow-ups with folks that you know are unsheltered, you're going to make sure that your outreach folks have an active enrollment or a partial enrollment if you're a path worker and don't have capacity to take them on yourself on your own caseload. You're going to make sure that you complete the current living assessment, which should be dated for the night of the pit. So even if you do your follow-ups the 7 days after, you want to make sure that you are confirming whether or not they were literally homeless the night of the pit, and your current living assessment should reflect that date and their living assessment situation. So only the clients that have their current living assessment done for Tuesday the 24th will actually get pulled into the PIT database, as I mentioned. So you can go to the next slide for me, Brendan. Oh, actually, sorry, go back. For the non-HMIS participating agencies, I'm sorry, I forgot you guys. You're going to want to do your own internal process of cleaning up your client records, making sure that they're accurate, and then capture any required demographic information for each client. So that would be race, ethnicity, age, and gender. And then you also want to collect any subpopulation that they may belong to. So that would be veterans, serious mental health, chronic substance abuse, HIV/AIDS, or domestic violence. Those are all things that you're going to need to manually enter into the PIT database. Now, next slide. Thank you. So again, starting the week before the count, you should have done most of your data cleanup and should be ready to start figuring out who you're going to be following up with and reaching out to on the night of the count and the 7 days following the night of the count. So anyone that you've lost contact with, anyone who there's been really a lot of time that's passed and they've been sitting on your caseload, you should be discharging and closing out those enrollments to make sure that we have an accurate representation of who's actually out there. You want to also make sure that you are adding in any new enrollments that you have, make sure that they are included so that everyone is good to go for the night of the count, and you can just go ahead and do your current living assessments. I mentioned earlier the partial enrollment for anyone if you're a PATH outreach worker. So Demas PATH has been working with Nutmeg to make sure that there is a way to include folks in HMIS without a full enrollment and a workflow being done on them. So if you are having capacity issues, if your caseload is full, but you know someone who is literally homeless, who is not otherwise working with an outreach team or is not in a shelter or anything else, we still want to be able to capture those. We want to have an actual accurate representation of the live number of people that are actually literally homeless on that night. So you'll complete the partial enrollment and then also do the current living situation. So regardless, whether you're doing a partial enrollment, a full enrollment, HMIS, non-HMIS, there needs to be a current living situation done for those that are in HMIS. Otherwise, they will not get pulled into the PIT database. So I think that covers everything. Just we want to make sure that those things are done so that they actually get pulled in. If anyone has any questions about any of that, let us know, reach out. You have your contact information for the COC leads. If there's a technical issue related to the PIT database itself, contact Nutmeg, all that. So.
Okay.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you. I just want to also say before I go on to this slide, we talk about that we're doing this now for the unsheltered count, right? So most of you are working for outreach programs, but there are on the unsheltered side of the PIT database, there are also some warming centers, some drop-in centers, and it's this funny language that HUD uses to determine each different thing, right? That this is why we ask you the very specific questions we ask you. If you are a warming center or a drop-in center and have beds or cots or mats for people, then the people staying there on the night of the count are technically considered sheltered. So right now, if you have a program like that and it's on the unsheltered side of the PIT database, please let Nutmeg know so they can and tell them exactly why that you have beds or cots or mats. And so your project should be on the sheltered side of the PIT database. Otherwise, if you are a drop-in center or a warming center, and people are sleeping there, but they're sleeping in chairs, they don't have a designated place to sleep, then they are considered by HUD unsheltered. So they should stay on the unsheltered side of the PIT database. Okay, incomplete current living assessments. As of this morning, I ran the report for incomplete current living assessments, and there were 535 statewide. I think there are a couple projects in there. It might be really slightly less for the projects that are appropriate for homeless outreach providers, but it's still pretty high. So as Lindsay focused on, as I'm going to say, look at those, look at the lists. I'm going to be doing targeted outreach to projects who have higher numbers of missing assessments or incomplete assessments. And those are assessments that haven't been done within the last 90 days. So we're targeting those because if, as an outreach program, we'd like you all to have contact with people if and when possible within the last 90 days. And if not, we ask that you exit those people unless you have a really good reason that you know of not to exit the person. So look at, when I send you the information for people in balance of state COC, look at the lists, determine whether people should stay active in your program and if they should, attempt to do a current living assessment on them now, so you have a good idea of where they are. So then when you're doing your look back after the night of the 24th, it'll be easier for you to reach them and to do an assessment that's accurate on them for the night of the count, so they'll be pulled in and counted appropriately. I'm actually going to start sending those emails this afternoon. We ask you to review all the data and complete your review, exits, or complete a current living assessment by the 16th of January. So then you can actually run a list and know who you need to do that outreach for after the night of the 24th to get an accurate current living assessment for that night. Next slide. Well, are there questions? No?
Yes. I have a gentleman who's doubled up, then outside, in and out, and I'll do my best to determine his location on the night of. If he is doubled up, the proper thing to do on the current living assessment is just that, right? To indicate.
Yeah.
Will that show up in the count, or is he?
If he's doubled up on the night of the count, he won't be pulled in as experiencing homelessness that night. And that's the nature
Right.
of
Okay.
that's the nature of the count. Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
Okay, so again, after the night of the count, which is Tuesday, January 24th, HMIS users are going to go into the PIT database and certify that the information in the PIT database is correct. You need to click a link and submit that information. If you're a non-HMIS program, you'll go into the PIT database, and Jim's going to walk through these with you in a couple minutes. You're going to go in there and enter the aggregated data for the people experiencing homelessness on the night of the count. You have you have until the 31st of January to go in to complete all your assessments for all your people, do all outreach, figure out where everybody was sleeping on the night of Tuesday, the 24th, and to confirm or enter that data in the PIT database. We already talked about we want to know where they're sleeping. We want the date on the current living assessment to be the 24th. This current living assessment guide is linked here. And again, for HMIS users, data is going to be pulled in the database when you complete that current living assessment form. If you are looking at your data in there and it's not what you expect it to be, then you need to fix the data in HMIS. You cannot manipulate, if you're an HMIS user, you cannot manipulate the data itself in the PIT database. The changes need to be made on the back end in HMIS in order for it to show up correctly. Next slide. And Jim's going to walk through all of this with you as well. So I'm not going to touch on it too much, but these purple buttons that you'll find in the PIT database are a way to see who's being pulled in, who's enrolled in your program, who's being counted as experiencing homelessness on the night of the count, and who of those enrolled people are actually being counted. Next slide. Thank you.
You see my screen? Yep. Okay, good.
Yep, you're good.
Well, Lindsay and Shannon pretty much said everything I was going to say, so I think we're all set. Everybody can go, and we're done. So I will give just a little bit more visual representation of what Lindsay and Shannon were reviewing to help people hopefully understand a little bit better where the information exists in HMIS, where it exists in the PIT app, and what the mechanics behind some of these assessments and evaluating data will be. And then for the non-HMIS outreach programs, we're going to do a full review of the PIT tables so you understand how to compile your data and then how to manually enter your data into the PIT app. Okay. So similar to the count last year for HMIS street outreach programs, again, that's been talked about a few times, that current living situation assessment. It is just the head of household that gets that assessment, and then any other household members will also get counted in the PIT app, so you don't have to do one for every member. You just do what you would normally do as a current living situation assessment for the head of household. You can do this now to start messing around as you could have back in November when we had the first training. Just know that all data is going to be cleared by the night of the PIT count. So for street outreach and emergency shelter, you'll be working from a clean slate. So you can practice now. You can create a current living situation assessment in a client record. The PIT app just reads 1 day behind. So if you wanted to see how things were working, you would have to create one dated on 1/4/2023, and you would see it. If you create it for 1/5, the PIT app's not going to see it till tomorrow. But on the night of the PIT count, you're going to do that for the actual night of the count, which would be 1/24. But again, if you want to practice to see how it works, you could certainly do that. Street outreach enrollments with a current living situation assessment that's more than 90 days old. So this is another thing that's been talked about quite a bit. I'm going to go to the PIT app really quick. If you do not see, when you log into the PIT app and you have these two options, sheltered count, unsheltered count, before you click either of those, on the right side, you should have some reports available to you. That data quality report that Shannon and Lindsay were referencing is here, and that's going to export as an Excel spreadsheet. There's a lot of tabs on this spreadsheet, all right? But the tab that they were referring to is the one that's labeled no recent CLA, no recent current living situation assessment. And as Shannon identified, there's 535 IDs, client IDs in HMIS where the person has not had a current living situation assessment in the last 90 days. And I did put a quick little pivot table together. So if people want to see quickly which orgs and which programs associated with that org have, looking at the numbers of missing or current living situation assessments that haven't been done because for whatever reason the client hasn't been contacted, I can certainly send that out or provide it to Shannon and Lindsay to send out if they like. But all you would need to do here, you can look at this by the name of your organization. You can look at it by the name of the program, however you want to do that. And you can, or you can just scroll through, find your program, and you can look up the client ID in HMIS, and you'll see that that person hasn't had a current living situation assessment from today back 90 days. PowerPoint. For non-HMIS participating outreach, similar to the count last year, you're going to be manually entering your data. If you do not see, when you log into the PIT app, if you don't see your outreach program or you don't see or you're missing one of your outreach programs, just submit a ticket to the help desk. Let us know who you are because, again, you're a non-HMIS user. So the most we're going to have to go on is if you participated last year. So make sure you provide us that information and the name of the program you're looking for. If we don't find it, we may need to create that for you, or we just may need to assign it to you just because you might not be assigned to it. as far as that goes, same with street outreach. You can start practicing if you want with the HMIS street outreach, but for you all, it's manual data entry. And again, just keep in mind that we are going to be clearing the database on the night of the count. So don't go crazy, but if you want to just maybe check to make sure you understand things before the night of the count, you can certainly do that and submit a ticket if you have questions.
Hey, Jim, someone had
Yes.
a question in the chat. It
Uh-huh.
said, sorry if this was covered, got booted and came back. What was the non-HMIS login password from last year?
So
Was
it,
the, yeah, was it?
if you had a PIT account last year and you're non-HMIS, it's the same username and password. That hasn't changed. So whatever you used last year is what you'll use this year. It was probably capital PIT 2022 exclamation point. So PIT 2022 exclamation point. If that doesn't work, just go ahead and submit a ticket and we'll give you a new password. But it would be your email address and PIT 2022 exclamation point. There are a select group of non-HMIS outreach and warming center programs where a feature has been created where you're going to be doing your PIT data entry on a smart sheet, okay? And here's the list of those programs that relates to. You've probably been contacted by now, I would imagine, because I know DOH was working on those contacts. What you're going to be doing is there's a link to the smart sheet. There is a desk guide available. We're going to look at that as well. And you're just going to fill out the form. And then what will happen from there is we have access to the smart sheet detail data. And we're actually going to import that data into the PIT database so it lands in the tables where it belongs. And your job will simply be, after we contact everybody and say, okay, all your outreach data is in, you're just going to go in there and confirm that it all landed properly. And there's just another screenshot of the form. And like I said, we'll look a little more closely at that in a minute. All right. There is an unsheltered population report that is also in the PIT database, and it's right here. It's similar to, for those of you who do sheltered, it's similar to housing inventory, but in this case, it's an inventory of the programs and the people who were counted in that program. So you can see there's no, as soon as it opens, you're going to see that there's no data there yet as far as people count data, but all the programs are listed, some program information, and then all your people count data by household and, again, age, and all the other categories, race, gender, ethnicity, all that stuff there. It's all in raw data format, but again, there is an inventory that is available for both COCs to take a look at when you need to. Okay, so let's get into the PIT app. For those of you who were part of the training earlier, towards the end of last year, all the login process is the same. If you're an HMIS user, you're going to use your HMIS username, HMIS password, and you're going to click HMIS account. If you're a non-HMIS user, you're going to be using your email address, the generic password that we've provided you, and you're going to click login. Do not click HMIS account because you'll get an error. And also, if you're an HMIS user and you don't click HMIS account, you're going to get an error message. Okay, so hopefully we've cleared that hurdle. We did get a few tickets when we launched back in November, and people were either clicking HMIS account when they weren't HMIS users or forgetting to click it when they were. So just make sure that you're paying attention to that when you log in. Once you're logged in, you're going to click on the PIT app tile, and you're going to go to unsheltered counts. Okay. And depending on how many programs you have access to will depend on what you see here. And this is where I would need to know if you're missing something. So if you're expecting to see an outreach program and you don't see it there, submit a help desk ticket, let us know. And again, it's either I have to assign it to you, or it might be a program we're not aware of that we have to create and add to the system. Okay. So for HMIS participating agencies, let's go down, we'll look at a sample. You're going to click on the pencil. And in order for data to pull into the PIT app, you have to have the client record, as has been discussed, has to have a current living situation assessment dated for the night of the PIT count. All these cells are going to be grayed out, okay? These cannot be edited. As Shannon alluded to, if you need to fix something in the PIT database for an HMIS program, you actually have to fix it in HMIS. So what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to look at your tables, make sure the data is landing properly. You're seeing the household types that you expect to see, households with at least one adult and one child, households without children. There, as far as I know, there are no unaccompanied child households out there in the outreach programs. But if you are an RHY program, you may have that in an outreach capacity, or the YHDP outreach programs may have the youth homeless in that capacity where they're street homeless. But again, as the HMIS user, your job is a little bit easier. You're just validating, making sure that the data looks appropriate. What you really want to do as the HMIS user is come down to the summary table. And again, Shannon had a screenshot of this where it showed enrolled persons not counted, enrolled persons, and enrolled households. And then up above, you have the total persons who were counted. Now, in this case, for this program, nobody's here because there were no current living situation assessments done yesterday. So again, the PIT database is always looking one day back. But what this is telling you is that there's 17 people enrolled, and none of those 17 people are being counted. So in most cases, you're going to have counts here. So let's say in this program's case, there were 13 people counted, but you're expecting a total of 17. So it would tell you that there's 4 people here that weren't counted. And what you need to do to see who those people are, you can just click on the button, and it'll give you the list of people. If it's 1 or 2, maybe 3 clients, you probably don't need to export that. But if it's a list of 17, I would export that. You just click download CSV, and all that's really going to do is it's going to create an Excel spreadsheet for you. So then you can go and using that list of clients, you can go look them up in HMIS, and you can see, number 1, is their program enrollment open, and number 2, do they have a current living situation assessment dated the night of the PIT count? If they have those 2 things, but the PIT database still isn't counting them, submit a help desk ticket. As I said on the call yesterday and the earlier trainings at the end of last year, spend no more than 5 minutes trying to resolve a problem in the PIT database. If you can't solve it in 5, you're not going to solve it in 10. That happens to me as well. I should have said this yesterday too, but if I can't solve something in 5 to 10 minutes tops, usually I have to kick it up to one of the programmers or one of the developers, and because they'll tell me the same thing. They'll tell me if you can't solve it in 5, you're not going to solve it in 10, and don't even bother wasting any more time than that. So same rule for all of you. If you can't solve it in a few minutes, submit a ticket. So let's talk about what a current living situation assessment looks like, where it is, and how that trigger works for getting the client into HMIS. I got to log back in. Hold on. Okay. So we're going to pick on Catholic Charities. I grab their street outreach program. So what you want to do is you're going to want to log into HMIS, select your provider, and whichever, if you're street outreach, you would want your street outreach role, or whichever role you use. Essentially, the current living situation assessment will show on the left side menu for your street outreach programs. But again, if I'm looking up these client records and I notice that there's some that aren't being counted, this is where I would want to go. I would want to use find client, put in the client ID, search the client. Client gets pulled in. You're going to go to case management and program enrollment first. Make sure that there's nothing wrong with the enrollment. So things like, the screen kicks off, this client has a long list. So for example, you want to make sure that this label says enrolled in program and not something else like pending or anything like that. Lindsay did touch on the partial outreach enrollment. As long as you have that partial outreach enrollment and the current living situation assessment, the PIT database is going to read that. So you're fine there. The other things to look for, again, everything looks open there. So right now, so far, this client record looks fine. I then want to go to case management and go to current living situation assessment. And if this were the night of the PIT count, I would want to look to see if the client had a current living situation assessment dated on the night of the PIT count where the situation was place not meant for habitation. So the PIT database is only going to read clients who are found to be homeless on the night of the count. That means their current living situation assessment has to be place not meant for habitation. If you select emergency shelter, they are assumed to be a sheltered homeless person, not an unsheltered homeless person, and then the emergency shelter will be counting them. So the PIT app is only going to grab the person who is in a place not meant for habitation for an unsheltered environment. As far as service type, it doesn't really matter. You can click case management. It's fine. It really comes down to date, program, and whether they're place not meant for habitation or not. Once all of that is done, you click save, and the PIT app will read that client. So now if you do those things for somebody who's not showing up and they still don't show up, again, submit a help desk ticket. Those are the things you're going to have to do on the night of the count in order to get the person to be pulled into the PIT database. Okay, so that's where these buttons for you HMIS providers, and you're in HMIS, these buttons are going to be helpful for you to find out who might be missing. Otherwise, once you've got everybody pulled in, then that's when you're going to want to scroll through your tables and make sure that if you have households with adults and children, households without children, things like that, that's where you're going to do that next layer of evaluation. So, for example, if you notice that you're expected to see more households and more people where you have adults and children, then that would be again where you submit a help desk ticket saying we served 5 families where we know there's 5 kids, but the PIT database is only showing 4 children. Those are the kind of things we can help with. I am going to go into a much deeper dive on these PIT tables when we talk about the non-participating unsheltered programs. So that's why I'm going a little more quickly through these tables now, because we're going to be doing a full evaluation of those for the non-HMIS agencies. So once you're confident in your tables, your summary data is looking good. You have 17 people for 17 enrollments. Then from there, you would just have to provide information if you have fewer people counted than enrolled. So if this were 17 enrolled and only 16 counted, well, what's the reason for that? Some clients were not located on the night of the count, or some clients are no longer eligible. Those would be your 2 options to select from. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and certify and save your data. Okay? And then you're good to go. You're all done. If you're not finished and you're going to come back, you can always click that you're not finished and save. But again, for HMIS related data, HMIS will refresh for you anytime you click the pencil and then save. So if you're not 100% sure, there's no harm in just canceling and moving away, because again, the data is always going to be there for you to pull in. Any questions on the HMIS participating side? No? Okay. So let's look at a couple quick guides. So the unsheltered HMIS participating current living situation assessment, Lindsay had pointed to this on the ACT site. This is the PDF that you'll have access to, walk you through how to do a current living situation assessment. So you do have that guide if you need it. Okay, that's available. There's also the for non-HMIS participating, we also have the guides for you. We have a full evaluation on how to fill in the PIT tables, so that's available to you on ACT site as well. And it goes much deeper. This is not the full document. This is just on how to check and look for your programs. The full guide is a full table by table guide, and it gives you examples, gives you scenarios and things like that to help. And that'll all make sense once I do the table by table review. One other thing I do want to look at is where are we? Yeah. So as we talked about earlier, there are some non-HMIS street outreach programs, and then there's just one warming center program in the list where you're going to be using Smartsheets. This is the link for the Smartsheet site that has the data collection form that you're going to be using. All right. So let's go there real quick. It's a very simple form. You're going to put in the client ID from HMIS if you know it. If you don't, just leave it blank. You will provide the client first name, the client last name, client date of birth, and client social. You'll provide the age information and veteran status. You'll provide race, ethnicity, and gender, and you'll provide a household type, relationship to head of household. And then the drop-down has the eligible programs listed here. These are the only programs that will be using this form. Once you select that, you'll put the name of the person submitting and your email address, and then you'll click Submit. That's all you need to do, but you need to do it for each client at your particular program. So for this program, BOSS, non-HMIS, Unsheltered, Outreach, PIT only, if you're the user for this program and you have 5 clients, you need to do this 5 times, 1 for each client. We will be taking that data and we are going to import that into the PIT database. From there, once it's in the PIT database, we'll outreach to the programs involved. And we'll tell you, for example, we've imported your data. Your tables will all be filled out for you. All you'll need to do is confirm the data. And once you're confident that the data has landed correctly, then you'll come down to the bottom and you do have to provide some other basic information on the individual, just the adults that were imported into the PIT app, the number of adults with mental illness, number with substance abuse, number HIV, and any counts that you have where people identified as domestic violence. So again, for that cohort of projects, your data entry is going to be through that Smartsheet form that Bo had put together. And then from there, we'll import and we'll contact you once the import is complete. And then you'll just come in here and finalize. And once you're done, you'll hit save. For everybody else who's not on that list, so if you're not one of the agencies listed here, and you would know, so if you're saying to yourself, well, I don't know if I'm on that list, then you're probably not on it because the outreach by DOH, from what I understand, has happened. So you should be aware already that you're on this list. For everybody else who is a non-HMIS user, you'll know you're a non-HMIS user a few ways. One, your org would say PIT non-HMIS project, or you can see the connection has the org name, but their program is PIT only. And that's the other identifier that you're a non-HMIS program. And of course, you don't have an HMIS username or password. So this all means that you're going to have to manually enter your data, okay? So for this particular program I picked on, because it looks like somebody added some data, you have to provide a 0 for any field where there's no data. That's going to be rule number 1. For households with at least 1 adult and 1 child, okay, this is going to be those households where there's at least 1 person under 18 and 1 person over 18. That's the minimum requirement. In order for you to add people to this table, the household has to meet that criteria. So these would be your households where there's, a parent with at least 1 child under the age of 18. So that could be a 28-year-old parent and a 3-year-old child. That could be a 35-year-old parent and a 16-year-old child. It could be 2 parents and multiple children. The key is that at least one of the children is under 18 and one of the parents or other household member is over the age of 18. If you have a household where you have the 45-year-old parent and the 19-year-old adult child, that data does not go on this table. That is an adult-only scenario. That is a household without children scenario. They would get counted down here. They would get counted as a household of 2 adults. So you would have 1 household of 1 person between 18 to 24 and 1 person between 45 and 54, okay? That would not be a household with at least 1 adult and 1 child. A scenario that would make sense here is you have a 65-year-old grandparent, 30-year-old parent, and 19-year-old child, and that 19-year-old has a 3-year-old. That household would go here because there's 1 person in the household under the age of 18 and at least 1 person over the age of 18. The other scenario you want to be on the lookout for is parenting youth. So if you have a household with the parent and the parent is 22, the child is 2, nobody else in the household is over the age of 24, then that is a parenting youth scenario. And you want to take note of that because you're going to have to supply that information not only up here, but further down, you're going to have to provide that as well in the subpopulation table. So in this case, we have total household is 4, total number of persons is 4, okay? So this can't be true. Total number of households is 4, total number of persons has to be at least 8. And the reason they have to be at least 8 is because there has to be at least one person over 18 and one person under 18. Okay, so right now there's nobody under 18 here. So this has to be at least 4 for this table to be true. Okay, if you tried to save this data, you'd get an error message. The other problem you have here is now we have to have at least 8 people counted for total persons to match the gender, race, and ethnicity. So here you would have to have a total that adds up to 8. Here you would have to have a total that adds up to 8. And here you would have to have a total that adds up to 8. Okay. If you have anything greater than that, you'll get an error. Less than that, the system won't care. It'll just assume that you don't have that data and it'll extrapolate from there. But you have to, you just can't be greater, but you should try to get as close to 100% there as possible. So again, the key here is if I say I have 4 households, I need at least 2 people per household because there has to be at least one person over 18 and at least one person under 18, which means I would have to have at least 8 people counted. I could have more, I can't have less. Okay, households without children. So this would be those households where nobody in the household is under the age of 18 and everybody is over the age of 18. So that could be singles, that could be an individual representing a lone, that would be one household of one person, or it could be a household of one household of 2 people. It could be cohabitating adults. So it could be a household of 2 25-year-olds or a 25 and a 30-year-old, or whatever the scenario may be, as long as nobody's under the age of 18. In this table, the total number of households obviously can never be less than total persons. I'm sorry, can be less than total persons. It can't be greater than total persons. So you could have 9 households of 10 people. You would expect, though, that if you have 9 households and there's 10 total people, that there's 2 people in one of those households, again, which is fine. So we'll take that back to 10. You could have this scenario again could be that adult, that parent with the adult child. So the 45-year-old parent with the 19-year-old child. So essentially that could be one household of one person here and another person there. So that would be fine. That's how it would look. But of course, if you have more than one household in your program, that's when you'd start to have to compile your data so it makes sense for the number of households served. Let's put this back to what it was.
Hey, Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay, go ahead.
Someone had asked where the smart sheets are located. I know you had talked about it before.
Yeah, there's a link in the guide. And if you're an agency who's going to be responsible for that, that will be provided to you. So if you don't have that link, then either A, you're not on the list of agencies, or B, it went to somebody else. But DOH would have that information. So is that person on this list of agents of programs?
They said that they are on the list, but they didn't receive a link.
Okay. I would, they can, I mean, I can provide it. It just, you go ahead and you can email the help desk and I'll check back with Lee to find out what communications are going out. All right, so yeah, so they can submit a help desk ticket and just say that they're looking for the link for the PIT smart sheet.
They say thank you.
Okay, all right. So once you've provided all your data for your households without children, again, same thing with demographics. You can be equal to or less, but you can't be greater. So you couldn't say 11 here because when you go to try to save, you're going to get an error message. All right. Once you're confident there, you can scroll down Households with parenting children. So these are the households where they're a child who is also a parent. So that means a 17-year-old or younger who also has a child with them. So 17-year-old parent with a 1-year-old. That is a unaccompanied parenting child scenario. You would not count anybody here if they're accompanied by somebody over the age of 18. So 17-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 1-year-old, that would go in the households with at least one adult and one child table. It would not go here. But two 17-year-olds and a 1-year-old would go here. So that would be a household of 1. Let's just say chronic almost 0. Total number of parents would be 2. Total number of children would be 1, and chronic, we're just going to say 0 for now. Okay, so that's how that would look if it's one household with 2 parents and 1 child. Or you could have one household of 1 parent and 1 child. But again, if you say you have one household, you have to have at least 2 people, because these households have at least one parenting child who has a child. So it could never be this, for example. That would generate an error because you're saying one household with 1 parent but no children. So you have to have at least 1 there. If you say 2 households, then you would have to have at least 2 parents and at least 2 children, because that number would have to be at least 4. It would have to be at least twice the households. Okay. So for most of your programs out there, you're not going to run into this again. YHTP, RHY may have some data here, but for everybody else, you're going to be zeros. And then just provide the demographic information for the household. So again, you want it to equal or as close to 4 as possible, but you can't be greater than 4. Households with only unaccompanied children. These are going to, let me actually zero these out because the likelihood is small. And I don't want that to pull down to the next table. So households with unaccompanied children, again, these are the households where there is nobody over the age of 18 and it's an unaccompanied child. 17-year-old presenting alone, or 16-year-old presenting alone, or 2 17-year-olds who are cohabitating, presenting together, that's fine as well. But essentially, that would, you have your total number of 1-child households, so that would be 1. Total number of multi-child households. So again, that would be if you have more than 1 person presenting, and then total number of persons in the multi-child household. You would provide however many people are in that household. Say 2 there. All right. So again, most likely zeros for everybody here. There are not, I don't anticipate there are not going to be many, again, RHY, YHTP possibly, and the same thing goes for demographics. Now we're into the subpopulation tables. So this table is asking about the total number of persons who are in household, in a household with at least 1 adult and 1 child, where that household has a veteran. So this is not in addition to, but this is within your households with adults and children. So you're going to go back up here and you're going to look and say, okay, well, I've got 4 households of 8 people. How many, if any, of those households have a veteran? And let's just say, for this sake, there's 1 of those households is a veteran. So a veteran household with at least 1 adult and 1 child, you have 1. And we're going to say they're not chronically homeless. Total number of persons, we'll say, is 2. And total number of veterans is 1. So this has to be at least 2, because to be at this table, again, you're saying that it's a household of at least 1 adult and 1 child, and in this case, there's 1 veteran. You could have more than 1 veteran in a household. If you had a household of 3 people, you had 2 parents and 1 child, and both parents were a veteran, that's fine as well. But essentially, it's asking for the total number of households where there's a veteran. Of those total households, how many people are in there and how many of them are veterans. Okay. Now, keep note here, the demographics are just for the veteran. So when you put in the data here, if I try to say 2 because I'm looking at this number, I'm going to get an error because the validation that's going to happen is going to be looking to compare to this number. So again, you can be equal to or less, but you can never be greater on the demographics, okay? So it's going to pull from there, or it's going to at least count against there. So if you say you have 1 person, it's going to come back in here and say, okay, that makes sense. But if you said 2 here, it's going to say that doesn't make sense, and you're going to get an error. Right? Veteran households without children. So again, going back to your households without children table, you're going to look and say, well, I've got 10 households of 10 people. Are any of them veterans? And you can say, all right, well, 2 of those households are veteran households. So you're going to come down to veteran households without children. Say total number of households is 2. Total number of persons is 2. And how many are chronic? You say 0. If they're chronic, you can certainly add that. I'm just saying they're 0 for now. Total number of veterans is 2. Perfectly allowable. This would be a scenario where you have 2 individuals representing or presenting alone, and both of them happen to be veterans, and they're also in your, they're staying, or you've counted them in your outreach program. Again, same rule here. They just want to know about the veterans. Where you might have a household scenario where it is not everybody is a veteran, you could have one household of 2 people, cohabitating adults, and only one of those people is a veteran. That's how that would look. So you have one household, 2 total people, only one is a veteran. That's a perfectly normal scenario you could have. That's fine. The key is that you just want to provide the demographics on the veteran. So again, these tables are going to be comparing against this value. If you put a number that matches total persons, you're going to get an error when you save. Okay? The youth subpopulations. So this is where the system is going to look and see what you've provided for unaccompanied child households. And what it can't do is it can't make a determination of how many parenting youth households you have. So it will look here and say, households with parenting children, what are my numbers? Okay, and it can migrate that data down. But what it can't do is it can't look here and determine how many of these households are a parenting youth scenario, because there's just no way for it to know that one of these people is the parent for one of these children, and there's nobody else in the household over the age of 24. So in most cases, you're going to have you're going to have an array. This case, you could say that because there's nobody, everybody else is 0 over the 24. So you can make an assumption that there's, obviously all 4 households are parenting youth, but it would be a very rare occurrence that you would have that. So you will have to know who those unaccompanied youth households are, and you're going to have to supply that data here, okay? So in this case, it did grab it though, based on how I put the data, so it did pull it down for you. But I would definitely validate that because it's making its best guess, and in this case, it's right. But these fields that are not grayed out are fields that you can change the numbers, okay? So you're going to want to make sure you know how many households you have of parenting youth, and then how many children are part of that parenting youth household, and how many parents are part of that parenting youth household, okay? Okay. And then you're going to want to update, and again, you're going to most likely have all 0s here because there's going to be very few to none of unaccompanied children out there. So for any of the parenting youth scenarios, you're going to have these numbers match what those numbers would be. So the number of households where there's an 18 to 24-year-old who's a parent, and there's at least one child under the age of 18. So you would say, a 19-year-old and a 3-year-old, for example, would go on this table as well. This table only wants the demographics on the parent, okay? So pay attention to that. So number of parenting youth is 4, so it only wants the demographics on those 4 people, okay? Or if you do have parenting children, then it would want that combination of total number of parents. But again, it wants the parent data, not the whole household data. Unaccompanied youth households, again, the system is making a guess because we said everybody was 18 to 24 here, all right? So it can make a guess that these are all unaccompanied youth, but you're going to want to check that and confirm it. If all of them are unaccompanied youth, fine. If you did supply data on an unaccompanied child table, it'll pull it down here. But again, for most programs, that's going to be 0. And here, chronic. And then the demographics go below, and it would be demographics on everybody here because everybody's assumed to be the unaccompanied youth. There's no children here. Everybody there's children for the unaccompanied child, but there's nobody here that it doesn't want the demographics on. It wants the demographics on everybody on the So you'll provide the demographic counts that match the total person count here. Okay. So those are the tables for the PIT data. Once you've completed all that, you're going to come down to the summary table. It's going to tell you how many households and how many persons. The total number of households is coming from your primary tables, and that's households with at least one adult and one child is 4. Households without children is 10, so that's 14. Okay, and everywhere else we had zeros. All right. Those are your 4 primary tables that populate your summary. So 14 total households, 18 total people. It does not look at the veteran tables or the youth subpopulation tables. Okay, those are not in addition to your population; those are within your population. So within your population, however many veteran households you had and how many veteran clients you had, for example. So it's only looking at the primary tables for your primary population. Once you're happy with that number or those numbers, you think they're correct, then the only other thing you have to do is for all the adults, provide how many have serious mental illness, substance abuse, AIDS, or domestic violence. If it's 0, then you're going to provide the zeros, okay? Again, the rule is leave no cell untouched. Every cell needs a value, whether that value is a 0 or a digit. So for example, if I tried to save, the database is going to give me an error message because it's expecting to see zeros there. All right, once you're satisfied with all that, you can click confirm and save. If you don't get any errors, then there's no logic problems to what you put in, and you're going to be able to go ahead and move on to your next program. If you have another one, if you only have one program, then you're all set. If you get error messages and you're struggling to understand where they're coming from, don't waste time. Submit a help desk ticket. Let us know the name of your program and what the error messages were, and we can go and probably most likely set up time to meet with you to look it over. One of the other things I should have also reminded people of yesterday is that when you submit a help desk ticket for PIT-related assistance, also provide us some dates and times when you're available for a screen share. And don't make it just one day. Give us 3 days and times when you're available. Just because with the total number of users out there for, with regular HMIS activities on top of PIT activities, the help desk staff are going to need to schedule these things out. So if you need assistance, let us know some dates and times when you're available so we can pick one of those dates and times and send you a screen share link. If you send in a ticket, it's 2 o'clock on January 5th, and you submit a ticket saying I'm available tomorrow at 10 a.m., the likelihood that one of us is available at 10 a.m. tomorrow is slim. So make sure you give us some dates and times to pick from. That'll help accelerate when we can meet with you, and there's not going to be a lot of back and forth, because if you don't give us dates and times and we want to do a screen share with you, we're going to have to ask for some dates and times or provide you some dates and times when we're available, and then you're going to have to come back to us. So again, to eliminate or reduce the back and forth, please let us know your best available dates. But again, like I said, when you go to save, if you get errors, the errors will pop up top, but they will also pop up next to the field where the error is occurring. So you can give it a shot, but again, don't overdo it. Don't exert yourself with those. We don't mind helping out. A lot of times we can help you out really quick, and then you'll be on your way. Okay. Any questions about those? I just want to make sure. We got all of our, we got all of those. So I think, we covered everything there that people would need.
Jim, I don't know if you see this question. What do we do if a warming center has cots, but not enough cots for everyone? First come, first serve. Do we need to have part sheltered, part unsheltered?
I would say that's maybe for the COC. I don't know. I mean, we could create 2 programs, or because then you would need one emergency shelter program to count the people on cots, and then you would need an outreach program to count the people who are considered unsheltered. So that would be an unfortunate scenario.
It sounds like it's a real scenario.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head right now, I think the best thing to do, I'm assuming right now it's set up as a shelter, Margaret. If it is, and if there end up being people on the night of the count that are sleeping there and not in cots, not in a bed, not in a mat, then get in touch with us and with Nutmeg
Yeah.
to set up an unsheltered program and to collect information for those people as well.
Yeah.
Okay, she's saying she has a plan with Lee, and
Okay.
she'll be in touch if need be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, no more questions?
None in the chat.
Okay.
Anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask.
Yeah, practice, play around. The PIT app is open. Just again, keep in mind, we are going to be clearing data before the night of the count. So it would be more of a, just maybe to make sure you understand the logic on the tables for the non-HMIS programs, and for the HMIS programs, it would just be to make sure you understand the mechanics on what gets a person counted in the PIT database. So for example, if you wanted to create a current living situation assessment to get the person to show up, you could do that. Just make sure that you understand the PIT app reads a day behind. So if you wanted to look at it tomorrow, the person would have to have it for 1/5. And you should be able to, let me just make sure I'm not lying, but then if that was not a valid current living situation assessment, you should all have the ability to delete it. So after you create it, and if it's not a valid one, you just wanted to do a test one, you can go ahead and delete it from here and it'll be fine. But if you have a valid one, great, because then you just leave it there after you're done. Yep.
I have a question for Jim. It's Tony from Curry Hospital. Hi, Jim.
Yeah.
If you're an HMIS provider and someone is refusing to participate in that process, but you're working with them, should that person go into the database as anonymous, or how can we capture that individual?
So if they're refusing to sign the release,
Right.
then your only option is anonymous. And
Okay.
then hopefully at a later date, they'll sign it, and then you can update their demographics with their actual info.
Okay. It's not so much signing, refusing to sign this, the person's kind of unable to sign because of their mental status.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, it would have to, if there's no active release and they can't verbally consent, then you either hold off on enrolling them or you enroll them as anonymous, and just take note of their client ID so you know which client that anonymous record is associated with.
Okay, and one other question when I have you. So if, say there's 10 people enrolled in your program, just for keep the math simple, 2 of them are with a family member that one night, the data should only, and you capture that they're staying with someone for the night of the count. The data pull should be only the 8 folks, right?
Correct. Yeah. So what it's going to do is it's going to look at the current living situation assessment. So if on the night of the count, their current living situation assessment is, staying with friends or family, so you have either one of those, the PIT database is going to ignore their record.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
let's say the night of the count, we're out, we run into somebody that's homeless. How do they get services counted for that night?
Well, if they're in HIS, then whenever staff get back to the office or whatever the normal process is for getting data into HMIS, you have, is it 7 days? I'm sorry, is it 7 days? Yeah. So you have 7 days from the night of the count to get the data into HMIS. So to do that current living situation assessment for any HMIS records.
If you spot someone, Leroy, you got to get them into HMIS, enroll them, and then do the current living situation.
And if you don't have full information, do the full enrollment, do the partial enrollment, and then
Right, but it's okay to do it. So what you're saying that the night of the count is not going to be the actual night that all the info is going to go in. We have a grace period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So if you find someone Tuesday night and you're not able to get them in until maybe like Wednesday or Thursday because of reasons, that's fine. You have the 7-day window to be able to do your follow-ups and everything else, maybe work with your supervisor, do whatever, get the enrollment in, but
Yeah.
the current living situation date needs to be for that Tuesday.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Excellent. Excellent to know.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're evil, Leroy, but they're not that evil. They're not making.
Okay, that's good to know, though. That's really good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, my name is Larry. I'm trying to say I'm the coordinator of Bridgeport Office of Veteran Affairs. So basically, I'll be dealing with exclusively veterans, which unfortunately in this area we have a lot of homeless veterans and people who are who fall between the cracks. So I am very interested in what you are doing, and I would like to find out how I can be a participant in this.
Yeah. So if you have a street outreach program where you outreach to unsheltered veterans.
Well, see, we are affiliated with Home for the Brave, but
Okay.
there are other organizations too that have veterans that sometimes getting them placed could be a little interesting. But we do have a large amount of homeless veterans in the city of Bridgeport. I just would like to know more about that because my concern is that as they go into the winter months, that a lot of them we're having inadequate shelter, no shelter at all.
Right. So for the night of the count, or for PIT, all we would need to do is make sure there's a program set up for you in the PIT database for you to track those individuals. But if you've done work with Homes for the Brave, then Maria Satterwhite can, I think, provide some information. And if she's on the call, I apologize. I don't mean to speak for her. I thought she was on yesterday. I don't know if she's on today, but also if you have a program that you would like to get into HMIS because you want to do data entry in HMIS, then Lindsay, again, if you want to, that would be a conversation you all could have and go through CCH to get that.
Yeah, Larry, you can send me an email after this meeting and we can chat and kind of figure out what it is exactly that we need to do to get you set up, if you should have a separate project or if we need to just make sure that we're coordinating with Homes with the Brave appropriately to count anyone that they may already be working with.
Yeah.
Well, it may be a separate program for Home for the Brave, but because we're affiliated with them as far as how we work together to secure the veterans and their families.
Okay, but you and I can have that conversation because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, even if it is separate, that there's no duplication, right?
Oh, yeah.
People aren't being counted multiple times. So just send me an email and we'll talk through that.
Okay.
And then I can loop Jim in if we need to for any reason.
Okay.
Thanks, Larry.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
My email is in the chat. It's right there, lindsay@thehousingcollective.org.
Okay, any other questions for Jim? Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excuse me. All right, folks. So we reached essentially the end of the presentation. Next few slides are our reiteration of our contact information. Just like yesterday's, we were able to get the recording up on our website by the next day. So I anticipate that happening right now. And then as mentioned earlier, if you want to take a look at the sheltered, I know a lot of folks do both. It is on our website in that link that was provided in the chat. But here are our email addresses, myself, Shannon, Lindsay, and Jim. This will also be uploaded as well, these PDF documents. And then here's some more email address, more of the general ones: Nutmeg, CT Boss, ODFC contact is Lindsay, so she's on there twice. But as always, we encourage you to provide as much information as possible. We're in the world of question marks, so we want you to be an explanation point. I just made that up. I felt it, and I feel really confident about that. So yeah, maybe that's the next tattoo or something. But anywho, but these are email addresses. So just a couple key dates and references. The actual night of the count is Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, 18 days from today. I'll take gloomy weather over snow any day. The deadline to enter the data is 1 week after that, which is going to be Tuesday, January 31st, 2023. That is the link for our website. It has everything that we've mentioned over the last 48 hours. It's split up very nicely by folks who do that way better than I do. So once you click the link on the left side, it's all of the desk guides, and they're in chronological order. On the right side, it's all of the recordings. Today's recording will be up there. Yesterday's recording, even the kickoff recordings from October are there. So we pretty much put at the forefront pit season. So it's going to be the last two of 2022 and the first two of 2023, which would be the kickoffs and the refreshers. So that's how we're going to continue to do it. If for some reason you want to see what happened last year, we archived the videos from last year as well. And last but not least, all of the documents, bed change forms, if it's a extenuating circumstance, and you need that, that's there. Any type of any fillable document is there. So I say that to say everything that you need should be there, but by all means, please reach out to the group. That's why our contact information is there. And yeah, before I stop the recording, does anybody have any additional questions, concerns, any of the above before I give you back your afternoon?
I'm going to give my one last reminder to folks. I do this every time at the end of every meeting because it always happens. I inevitably get a couple of emails from folks from the wrong COC. So if your project is located within the confines of Fairfield County, Bridgeport, Stamford, Norwalk, Danbury, the greater areas for those 4 communities, you would email myself. If it is anywhere else in the state, for the balance of state, the Connecticut balance of state, you would email Shannon's team, the Housing Innovations team, and that is ctbosscoc@gmail.com. I am Lindsay at housingcollective.org. So if you are unsure where you are located geographically, then you can email both of us and we'll make sure that it gets to the appropriate, we'll handle it appropriately. I just don't want someone to send me an email that I don't recognize and I'm not going to get to it and there will be a delay. And I really want to avoid that. We want this to be as streamlined as possible. So that is my repetitive announcement that I like to make at all the meetings. I want to make sure that we are able to help each other as much as possible. So thank you.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, thank you all for taking the time. Sorry about the mix up earlier. Technology will do what it's done, but we all were able to get on here and we're all still alive. So with that being said, I bid you all a farewell, and this will be up. Give me till lunchtime tomorrow, but we'll make it happen.
Thank you all.
All right, everybody. Take care.